So here in the syllabus to the Introduction to the New Testament Theology, I'm just going to cover some of the highlights for things you'll need to know in order to succeed in the course. So first of all, you'll find in the syllabus several key informations, certainly my name, as well as my office hours, so you'll know where I am at. And if you are in the Oklahoma City area, you can certainly come by my office during those times. I also provide my work number as well as my home number. So if you do need to call me during my office hours, there's my number with the area code. And you're also free to call me at my home, though I will let you know that if you call me at my home, it'll probably go to voicemail. You can leave a message and then I can call you back. You can also email me, and that's probably going to be the best way to get in touch with me. And I will try to respond to emails within 24 hours. I also have a thing called virtual office hours where I'm not physically present in my office, but I am somewhere and I am checking emails during that time. Here we provide OC's motto and OC's mission statements, which are pretty standard for all our syllabuses here. We also provide a Christian worldview that you can read and my teaching philosophy. Towards the specific of this course, notice that this course does introduce students to the history and practice of New Testament theology, its methodological strengths and its weaknesses, and its relationship to other theological disciplines. What students are going to do is they'll learn how first century AD Greco-Roman and Jewish cultures shaped and gave expression to the theologies that are discernible in the New Testament. And students are also going to be led to critically evaluate how contemporary culture attempts to interact constructively with the theology of the New Testament. So why this course is important is because once a student has kind of mastered the basics of New Testament theology, they're going to become more knowledgeable about the critical issues that are involved with the books of the New Testament. They'll also be able, with that knowledge that they'll have in this course, be able to explain more accurately what the books of the New Testament are, where they likely came from, and what their major content is, and what impact this knowledge can have on understanding New Testament theology. So a student now will be able to say, okay, this is why this author is saying this information to his audience, and what ideas or thoughts or theology he believed his audience ought to obtain or acquire or preserve in. So some of the learning objectives for the course is that you'll be able to identify the major methodologies that are employed in the study of the New Testament, especially those that relate or deal with understanding some aspect of what's called Second Temple Judaism. That is the time between when the first temple was destroyed in 586 BC and the time in which it was the second temple was destroyed, which was in AD 70. So that's referred to as Second Temple Judaism. And also the aspects of Greco-Roman culture and its context and how they are forming and shaping what's being said in New Testament books. You'll also be able to define the New Testament theology and explain why the discipline was created. The student will also be able to summarize major moments in the history of New Testament theology and distinguish New Testament theology from other theological disciplines. The student will also be able to compare and contrast several of the major questions or the issues that New Testament theology attempts to address. The student will be able to show how their knowledge of the genre and the major content of several New Testament books can be utilized to identify cultural influences upon its authors and their theologies. So once we're able to identify, okay, this author is saying these things because this is culturally what's happening in their world, and therefore they are expressing some of that culture in the things that they are teaching or saying. And they'll be able to explain at least one major theological teaching of a New Testament book and then critically reflect on how its theology might be applied to interact constructively within a contemporary cultural context, whether that context is a Western or an Eastern, some other Southern context. So wherever a student might live, they have a cultural context in which they operate in. How does a New Testament theology interact with the culture that that student happens to live or reside in? So, as far as some of the required textbooks, you do need a Bible. Any version is acceptable. There is the David De Silva's book, An Introduction to the New Testament, that you'll need, as well as Frank Matera's New Testament Theology. These are the two major sources that will be used. You'll also see learning activities and assignments, things that will be required. What's going to be a better guide for you is going to be the schedule. Here, this just simply lists what you'll be doing, but the schedule will show you when these things should be done. So there are going to be weekly participations, things that you'll be listening to, podcasts. There'll be assignments, so just keeping up with those each week. As well, there are quizzes that you'll be doing, and this helps you to make sure you understand the material that's presented in the podcast and in the reading. And you'll be able to take these quizzes multiple times in order to raise your score. There are also online interactive discussions, several of them, 4 in particular. And this gives you a chance to interact with other students, and you get to share ideas, share insights, share understandings, and learn from one another. I, too, am involved in those discussions, so I see what students post. I interact with them. You're responding to questions that I will set, but you're also getting to respond to one another and helping each other as we all try to think about New Testament theology and its impact and significance. The student will also write an essay on New Testament theology. This is kind of demonstrating what it is that they know currently, how they understand this discipline to work or to operate. Then later on, there'll be a video presentation that the student will create and then upload into the course. And this is where they take a major theology in some New Testament book. And their presentation is primarily going to be assessed according to the rubric that outlines the requirements of the presentation, and making sure that it's also done by the date that it's due. The student will also write a paper about the genre and major context of New Testament books. You'll choose 3, and you'll discuss what those genres are, discuss what their major content is, the context in which they were written, and again, there's a rubric that outlines the requirements for the paper. You'll find all the rubrics in the course content section. And then there's a reflection paper that the student will write to complete the course that indicates the implication of a book's New Testament theology for today. So maybe one of the 3 that they wrote their paper on, they will then choose that book and then think about that book and how what is said in that book makes some impact upon how people are thinking or behaving or believe today about God, or about what God's will is, or about what God wants of his people, or what people to do. So those are the activities, and the rest of the syllabus here has the grading scale and then some descriptions of the different assignments. I also provide here my availability and when you can contact me. So basically, it's for those office hours. You can call me or email me, or as well within my virtual office hours when it's outside of the normal office hours. As I said, most likely the best way of contacting me is through email. There's a description of the quizzes, a description of the online interactive discussions. As well, there will be provided a rubric for making a substantive discussion board contribution. That as well is found in the course content link. And the description about the essay, the New Testament paper on genre and context. There's a description about that. All of this will be uploaded into turnitin.com site inside the module when this assignment is due. Also, the description of the video presentation that you will do, and again, that will be uploaded into Blackboard where that can be seen. The reflection paper as well is going to be something that is written, and once again, it's going to be uploaded into Blackboard. A big requirement that you have for this class is obviously access to a computer and able to construct these essays, and you're going to need to have some capability to create a video, which I don't know whether you use YouTube or some other site that will help you to create the video and then be able to upload the video so that everybody can have access to it. Well, this I will end with the first overview of the syllabus, and in the second overview, I will go over the general policies for the class.